stop, landing 13 left if that's available.
Hotel Tango, India Mike, Palm Springs Towers, squawk 6250.
6250.
Papa Delta, Tango, India Mike, Palm Springs altimeters 2985, radar contact, about 10 miles west of the Palm Springs corridor. Presently landing, runway 31, requesting straight in for 13.
That's available.
Ever, departure Papa Delta Tango, India Mike, straight in, runway 13 left, and clear land, wind at 0905.
Yeah, land runway 3 left, public land markings.
Palm Springs, Browns 4658 is type PC final slam call request clearance to Vegas S5.
This 4658, Palm Springs clearance. Good afternoon. Unable to give you this file, and I'll be forward to step. This 4658 is cleared to the Las Vegas airport. VFI Cathedral 1 departure procedure to Palm Springs. Victor 370 to 29 Palms. Victor 538. Presto. Then Presto 3 left. Maintain 7,000. Check flight level 405 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 126.7. Squawk 6316.
Palm Springs, Victor 37029, Palm Sector 538, Presto 3, initial 27, departure 167,
Plus 4658, reback is corrected. Tango, you might connect to the ground via Aqua.
Facing to the right of the Echo, remaining on this frequency, public Delta India Mike.
Ontario Tower says the 237 Charlie Alpha approximately 4 miles to the west inbound to land.
Number 237, Charlie Alpha, roger, inner left, traffic, left downline runway 26 left, report base.
And left downwind 26 left, report your base 237 Charlie Alpha.
Charlie Tower United 242 on the visual report 20 right and time for right base.
United 242, Charlie Tower, runway 20 right, clear to land, wind 170.3.
Clear to land and right to land.
Near 563 Kilo Palomar Tower, runway 24, clear land, wind 210 at 1. Number 237, Charlie Alpha, runway 26 left, clear land.
That's 7 Charlie Alpha.
Palm Springs Round Clouds 4658 is trying to weather for taxi.
Plus 4658, Palm Springs ground, runway 31 right, taxi via Echo and Bravo.
Trail right via Echo Ground 465.
PilotEdge Tower, good morning. The Alpha waiting for you.
Number 2903 Alpha Riverside Tower, good afternoon. Runway 9 clear low approach, 40 minutes.
The Alpha, low approach, runway 9, exit door 4.
Palm Springs Tower close 4658 ready to go train right back Bravo.
Plus 4658, Palm Springs Tower, runway 31 right, clear to takeoff.
Sure takeoff train right Buzz 465.
Here's our Yankee Kilo Rush, taxi into the ramp via Alpha. Plus 4658, contact for departure.
Contact departure 465.
Says the 7 Charlie Alpha is clearly active, taxi to the GA parking base.
Number 7 Charlie Alpha, man on the street, taxi into the south ramp via Sierra.
Southbound via Sierra with you 7 Charlie Alpha base.
Number 03 Alpha, confirm going around or going this? Number 03 Alpha, roger, execute the published missed approach procedure. Piper 203 Alpha, contact SoCal departure. Number 03 Alpha, departure frequency 135 Ontario Tower, November 516 Delta Mike, ground RLS 26 left, or 516 Delta Mike, Ontario Tower. Good afternoon, Ontario, wind is calm, runway 26 left for land.
26 left, clear land, 601. Ontario Tower, November 36. Correction 516 Delta Mike, clear the active uniform, taxiing to the south apron.
For 6 Delta Mike, roger, taxi in south ramp via Sierra, remain on the street.
Here's Sierra on this frequency 6 Delta.
PilotEdge Tower,
Alpha, Riverside Tower, runway 27, clear land.
Clear land over 2703 Alpha. Riverside Tower, November 2903 Alpha. In Alpha, request taxi to the friendly party.
Number 2903 Alpha, Riverside ground. In future, don't switch to the ground frequency unless you're told to do so. Stay with tower, exiting the runway all the way to the low short plane. Stay on this frequency for now, taxi to Grand Via.
Yeah, okay. 2903 Alpha.
Runway clearance, runway clearance, November 6th, Charlie Mike Cherokee. I would like to attempt to I-4 ratings with
Cherry 76 Charlie, Mike John, thanks. Good evening, good luck on the I-4 destination. Will be, let's go Kilo, Oscar, X-ray, William.
that's Kilo, Oscar, X-ray, 16.
Yes, sir, good.
I gotta sign off and collect some information for this destination. I'll sign back in. Is that okay?
Absolutely, just report when you're back with the I-4. And how long do you think it'll be? It's not gonna be more than an hour, is it?
No. Well, I have to file and get some charts in place.
Wonderful, yeah, I'll still be here, so it shouldn't be a problem. And we'll look for your flight plan to come through. Wish you nice luck.
The Las Vegas Tower applies 465 usual 1 hour right for Pleasant 500.
Plus 4658 Las Vegas Tower, runway 19 right, clear to land, wind 2807.
Clear to land 1 hour right 465.
Plus 658 exit right, taxi into the ramp via hotel, and then on the street today.
Thanks, right, right.
Taxi the active IFR East Departure with weather.
On Long Beach ground, you just verify your call sign, please.
Sorry about that. 916 Whiskey Alpha. November 916 Whiskey Alpha.
Comanche 9016 Whiskey Alpha, Long Beach ground, roger. And just confirm VFR eastbound.
Eastbound at East Ranch, just south of
Comanche 9016 Whiskey Alpha, roger, runway 26 right, taxi into
K25 right, 8 Kilo, 916 Whiskey Alpha. Long Beach Tower, November 916 Whiskey Alpha, holding short of 25 right, Kilo, for departure,
Round 16 Whiskey Alpha, Long Beach Tower, runway 25 right, clear to takeoff, right down, departure, blue.
Clear to take off 25 right, right down, and departure to 6 Whiskey Alpha.
Good day, Palm Springs, ground spanning over 13 East Ranch, India, cross traffic, 31 right.
Papa Hotel Tango tonight, Palm Springs, ground say dinner traffic.
Braces, that's not.
Skyline Tango, you might take you, runway 31 right, taxi via Echo Bravo.
Echo and Bravo.
We're center, 701 Juliet, cross ground left.
Okay, so somehow we see there's no like clearest delivery with the speed, so we get our departure instructions with tower or
Always go with the lowest, so we'll start with ground, just say your intentions.
okay, Scout 701 Juliet, type 7172 on the south numbers with numbers requested VFR advisories to
We're 791 Juliet, roger, departure frequency 134.9, squawk 2061.
1249 2061.
Got 901 Juliet, read back as correct, your taxi now.
A couple of minutes, just go down to Scout 701 Juliet, south numbers.
Sky 791 Juliet, roger, runway 2 right. Taxi via hotel, correction, taxi via Alpha and Juliet.
29 taxi by Alpha and US Scout 701. Palm Springs, now we're spelling public identity. Mike is short runway 31 right, Bravo, and ready for departure, close traffic.
Hello everyone, back in the saddle, back in the cockpit. It's been a while. I did a flight, I guess a month ago or a few weeks ago, where it was just, well, it was actually quite a complex VFR flight from, what did we do? from Santa Monica to John Wayne to the LAX Bravo. It was pretty exciting, and it went pretty well. Meanwhile, I've been working so hard on building our own Cessna Skyhawk 172 SP, as you probably know, on my other computer here, my iMac next to me, and we just finished the flight model in PlaneMaker and Airfoil Maker, and I'm so proud the thing flies like it should. So next up is going to be Blender, making the visual model of the Skyhawk, making it fancy, animated, high-res cockpit and stuff. So that's the next stage of my development project. But for now, first, I'm going to continue my IFR training because, yeah, that's still the primary focus of my channel. Also of my passion for flight sim is just to fly. Yeah, I've been, I was quite invested in my IFR training. Obviously, I'm still totally in love with everything that has to do with flight training, but I need to rehearse and recapture the my progress actually of where I actually was and all the stuff that I've already learned in terms of IFR. A lot of knowledge and understanding has already seeped away, to be honest. For today's flight, rather than just doing again a plain simple traffic pattern or a VFR flight, what I'm going to do is a SID, a standard instrument departure. Now, for a Cessna Skyhawk, chances are that we will never be assigned a SID, a standard instrument departure, because mostly those departure procedures are assigned for, reserved for the big heavy airplanes. If we're going to depart IFR from any airport, most likely we're going to get assigned just a vector to get away from the SIDs as soon as possible, so we make room for all the big and heavy fast flying aircraft. So why am I practicing SIDs? Well, not that intensively, also not to go through each and every variation of a SID, but mostly just to practice reading those plates and learning how to follow a particular prescribed navigation route, because that's what the departures are all about. Also the arrivals and also the instrument approaches. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on flying a SID at Palm Springs today. So that's where we are right now. So it's good to be back. First of all, seeing my Cessna here, reality extension pack. Let me see. Here is Palm Springs. I set my own weather today, custom weather with very low visibility, because I'd like to do that SID, that departure procedure, mostly in IMC, instrument flying, right from the start. Because my previous flight went pretty well, I think it's good to really continue on that same level of complexity instrument flying. So that's the idea. Hey Jim, good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Happy Wednesday. So yes, so we got Palm Springs here. Now, what are we going to do? Well, first off, just for transparency's sake, on UncertifiedPilot.com, as you most likely already know, I share my curriculum, a self-designed course or training program that I think I need to go through in order to become as close to a real-world instrument rating and flight simulator as I can. Also mostly based off PilotEdge. What I did, as I did also with my VFR training, my IFR training program consists of 5 stages. I also shared this program with real-world pilots, IFR pilots and CFIs, so to make sure that I don't skip on anything. In review though, in the last couple of days when I revisited my website just to have a general look of what we are doing, it seems to be quite extended, perhaps a little bit too much, not in the sense that we're doing stuff that is really beyond or more too advanced for me as a student pilot in flight simulation, but mostly that's redundant. For example, these standard departure procedures you can see here, and even because as a 172 we will not be assigned those. Still though, I'd like to learn how to fly those. Not every single variation of a standard departure procedure, but I do like to be a little bit more familiar with those. Bungie were cheated using the GTN 750. Yeah, Jim, and the GTN 750 is a beauty. And also flying GPS is also very, very practical and relevant. So not only slant alpha, but also slant golf is very, very important. So that's also why I incorporated flying with the GPS as well. As you can see on top there, basic GPS and autopilot flying, which I already did. To be honest, again, I need to review those videos quickly to refresh my memory of the stuff that we already did, and I guess that's my own fault. Taking a break from my IFR training is not really handy, although at the same time though I do feel a little bit more relaxed and also allow myself to just I don't know, to let stuff sink in or so, or I don't know, that more hasty pace of training is also not necessarily that effective. Taking breaks is actually pretty good, and I'm also just totally blown away by the awesomeness of just creating my own aircraft through Playmaker. Aside from that, but still, I need to review these videos just to get a general sense back of what we were doing and what I've already learned. Anyways, there's a lot of stuff. I think it can be compressed a bit more, my program. So, for example, here you can see I would like to practice a standard departure procedure in winds, calm conditions, but also in crosswinds. Why? Well, you need to account. I mean, if you look at departure procedure, any kind of instrument procedure, they assign you particular headings to fly. But obviously, with a significant crosswind component, you need to compensate for the wind, right, to stay on track. And that's something that I most likely will always encounter or need to deal with as a IFR pilot here on PilotEdge in the flight sim, because we're always flying with real weather. So that's why that crosswind variation is added, or why I added that to my program. So standard departure procedure, what we're going to do today, standard terminal arrival routes the same. I think I don't know if those arrival routes, those stars, are also applicable for us as 172s. I think they do, but I'm not quite sure whether the same principle or the same reasoning applies like with the SIDs, where those are mostly assigned to heavy big airplanes rather than 172s that just get vectors. Perhaps that's also the case for stars, and we are just assigned a particular vector to get on the ILS as soon as possible, or on our instrument approach. I don't know. Still requires some study, I guess. Next up in that stage is going to be holding patterns. Now this is again, I've already compressed it a bit more here. I also made variations for each type of holding pattern, a winds calm and a crosswind condition. I think I'm not going to do that. It's going to be quite elaborate and will take me so many more flights, and I think I will get the hang of it soon enough. Cross my fingers though, we'll have to see. But holding patterns are really, really important. And also, by the way, the chance that we are ever going to be assigned a holding pattern as a 172 is also negligible. But for the sake of being complete and also just being interested in how the system works, I do like to practice flying holding patterns, and that's what we're going to do today as well. So I'm going to combine stuff. We're going to fly a basic SID here at Palm Springs, which includes a holding pattern, an optional holding pattern. Let's fly it in IMC and see how that goes. Now, on that topic of holding patterns, I made, perhaps you've already following me on Twitter and Discord, a handy aid. Bravo! I've signed a SID before in a 172 on PilotEdge. I was flying out of... Oh, is that true? Very nice. Okay, bravo. Well, I don't know where I picked that one up. That SIDs were very rare for 172s, but if they happen to be assigned on PilotEdge, then that further increases or emphasizes the relevance of learning how to do one. So thank you for sharing. Anyways, I made myself holding patterns. I knew that a holding pattern was some kind of racetrack kind of thing that you fly. However, there are different ways to enter a holding pattern, and that's where holding patterns become a little bit more tricky. And to wrap my mind around entering holding patterns, I made myself a handy dandy holding pattern aid, just 2 pages PDF, that I think for me would be useful on how to enter holding patterns, also in a more flexible, on the go kind of way, rather than trying to too extensively visualize stuff. So if you're interested in that, hop over to UncertifiedPilot.com, my most recent blog post, holding pattern 8 or something like that, just a free download, so go ahead and download that and use it yourself as well. I'm not going to explain the entire aid, just to say that I found a way that I didn't really find on Google before, but perhaps I'm not searching correctly. That is just based off of the heading indicator, so that when you're flying and you're setting your heading bug and you're flying inbound to your holding pattern fix, which could be a VOR or an intersection or an NDB, you just need to memorize a particular range of headings, and depending on where your heading bug of your inbound leg for that holding pattern ends up, in what kind of band here, the blue or the red or the green, you just need to remember what kind of entry you need to do. And that's it. And I also made some worked out examples here, so you get the gist of what you need to do. And it looks more complex than it actually is, but just to be transparent and complete, and just to share just the fun of studying this stuff, you can find that on UncertifiedPilot.com. Jim, it's great you're doing this. Also, I want to learn IFR for VATSIM, so I'll be catching up on YouTube. Roger that. In Real World 2, though, the 172 isn't supposed to fly in icing conditions, so can allow with this not cause icing. Well, it depends. You need moist in the air, but also freezing levels, and those combined, do increase the likelihood of icing. But yeah, in those cases, you would always try to avoid icing. I guess especially for a 172, we don't have any equipment on board to heat up the wings or the leading edge of the wings, or there's also some vacuum air pressure kind of mechanism where you blow up the wings, so you crack the ice if it accumulates on the leading edge. Anyway, icing is very, very dangerous. I remember one stream a long time ago where we were flying, also here in the Palm Springs area actually, where I did run into icing, and we don't see any visual accumulation of icing on the leading edge of the wing. Unfortunately, X-Plane doesn't really allow us to do that, but we did run into engine icing, which was very, very interesting. So very slowly my RPM decreased, and yeah, I thought, oh my gosh, my engine was broken. And when we descended and the temperature was rising, I eventually melted all of that ice, and then I got my RPM back. So that was really, really interesting, and shows you how significant icing actually is. So icing is obviously something that we need to look for. I don't know if we're freezing levels right now. If so, we need to change those obviously for this particular exercise with our custom weather. Anyway, so holding pattern 8, there you go. So that's some study that I already did. What are we going to fly? Well, we're going to fly the Cathedral 1 departure on Palm Springs. Ooh. Should have refilled my cup here with water. Quite thirsty. Ate some delicious pizza, but I get thirsty by eating pizza. From eating pizza. So this is a typical departure procedure. Where's Palm Springs? Well, you can see Palm Springs over there. 2 runways, short runway, long runway, as you can also see here in the front view. There's a lot of stuff on departure plates and arrival plates. If you're interested in this, hop over to the YouTube channel of PilotEdge, where Keith Smith tells you all about those. I've also been studying King School's IFR training course and a lot of other stuff. There's so many details, and again, what I really, really love or appreciate from learning IFR is how much information you can cramp into pages or diagrams or stuff. It's just amazing, and still they're quite lean and, well, not really simplified, but, well, clearly presented. It's really amazing. So the art of designing high information plates is really fascinating to me. So I also appreciate just learning about all there is to know about a particular plate. So the most important thing here is we got a graphical description of what we need to fly, and what we actually need to fly are the usual thicker lines, the arrows that you can see there. Those are the actual flight track that we need to fly. Those thinner lines are usually in reference to particular intersections or VORs, just to give you a little bit of a reference, or before you need to turn, on what radial you need to turn, you know, so just yeah, references, or in this case perhaps also assigned routes after you completed the departure procedure and you continue on your route, your en route section of your flight. So the actual departure procedure that we're going to fly is not going to include all of those thinner lines out, well, to those first kind of, yeah, final fixes, Palmdale, as you can see, Paradise, VOR, Homeland. So this departure could bring us over there. That's not what we're going to fly in this particular flight. I'm only interested in this first, the core chunk, the SID itself. We're going to fly from 31 right, so the smaller runway just in front of us. You can just see the numbers there. Quick taxi, and we're going to depart. As you can see, 310, we're going to go up and then make a right turn, go to the VOR of Palm Springs, which is just a few miles east of the airport, and you can see there a little bit of a holding pattern. Now, again, this is also why a visual depiction of a instrument procedure, in this case a SID, can be confusing, because how is this holding pattern sequenced into the other departure routes, turns and climbs that we need to do, right? It's not really that obvious. Do we first need to fly to MRUD here, then turn around and then enter the holding pattern, or should we first enter the holding pattern, or what should we do? So in addition to a graphical depiction, a visual depiction of what we need to do, there's always a textual description, and that's actually the most complete, most clear one, to be honest. Usually, and I'm just starting, but when I look at these charts, I need to review these charts, I'm rehearsing these charts. The visual depiction gives me a general sense of what I need to do, but I always, and I think every pilot, I also think that in King schools they say, you always need to read the text because it's much more detailed. So what you can see here, we can depart in two ways from Palm Springs, either from the runway 13 left or right, but we're going to depart 31 left, right. So, climb heading 310 to cross PSP, the Palm Springs VOR Vortec, radial outbound 268, then turn right direct to the Vortec. So, 310, as you can see, we're going to climb, and we're only going to make the first right turn once we cross this 268 radial outbound. So that already, in my mind, means that I need to set that radial in my VOR1 or VOR2. What about altitude? That's something that's in my mind right now. Then climb via the, so once we reach Palm Springs VOR, climb via the outbound 104 radial to MRUD intersection. Yeah, so that's that particular line. So first we're going to fly to MRUD. That little lightning strike symbol shows us that this is not to scale. So the distance between the Vortec and MRUD is not the same distance, in this case visually, as the Vortec to the airport of Palm Springs. But they just like to cramp it all into one plate, so they say, hey, just to let you know, this is not to scale. Jim, is this your first time flying SID, or have you practiced prior off stream? No, I haven't practiced at all. I did practice obstacle departure procedures though, and they're based off the same reading of charts. So in a way it does seem a bit familiar. So that's also why my training program is a bit redundant, because yeah, it all relies, it's all based off the same practice, I guess. So it doesn't make sense to go through each and every variation and stuff. So yeah. MRUD, you can see MRUD is again also defined. It's an intersection, you could see, and I think every fix should be based off, that's not entirely true. I think there's also solely GPS reference fixes. But MRUD in this case, you can see we can also measure that position by cross-referencing the Vortec of thermal, as you can see, 116.2 to the south, 322, and the 104 by Palm Springs, right? But we can also fly 104, and I think I also read a DME there. PSP 104 to MRUD, PSP, or 10 nautical miles DME. So we can also just fly 10 nautical miles outbound 104 from Palm Springs, and once we hit 10 DME, we know we would also reach MRUD. We can also set this into our GPS, obviously, but that's not what I'm going to do. I like to practice this stuff intellectually, practically. Then turn right direct to the Palm Springs vortex once more. Yes, that we see here. And again, all turns are based, I think all turns are always made by standard rate turns. So 360 degrees in 2 minutes, or 3 degrees per second. Yeah. Then, if not at EME minimum en route altitude, at PSP Vortex, climb in the Vortex holding pattern until reaching that MEA for assigned route of... so the holding pattern is at the very end of the SID. And what's the MEA? Well, it depends on what our en route would be in this case. And we're not going to fly any IFR. We're not going to file any IFR pattern. I'm just interested in flying the thing itself, technically. So here you can see, yeah, the MEA, which would also correspond with our crossing altitude. We're crossing Palm Springs. You can see here there's a description of all the altitudes that we should reach before we continue on a particular route outbound from Palm Springs to continue our en route section of our flight. And that depends on what direction we go to. And so they give a list here of the different directions that we can go through. To the left you can see all the different Victor Airways, Victor 16, 370, and then the altitude and the general direction that we are going. Sometimes, if you have a particular airway, a Victor blah blah blah, you can go either side, right? You can go from right to left or from left to right, and most of the times those altitudes differ. So that's why they put that northeast-west direction to the right of it. So in our case, for example, well, Victor 370 to the northeast. Victor 370, there it is. To the northeast corresponds. If that would be our en route portion of our flight, well, we need to fly 6,200. So we need, with our Cessna 172, we need to do those holding patterns at Palm Springs to get to 6,200. And that's pretty cool. So that's what I like to do today. Take off of Palm Springs, go to the Palm Springs Vortex, MROT, go back and circle up and holding my first holding pattern up to 5,000 or so until I get the hang of it, and then go back to Palm Springs. We're not going to fly on PilotEdge, obviously, because this is just a practice round, so it's just going to be fun old stick and rudder instrument flying today. Jim, thank you for dropping by, and good luck with that family duty work. Okay, so that's the briefing of the flight. Again, we set our own weather. Shift 9, we're back in the cockpit. Yeah, that's about it, so let's get starting. Let me sync my... Yeah, there we are. Don't know what's... I've also updated my wrap package here to the latest version, 3.3.1. And I noticed that the fuel tank selector is set to off, and I cannot change it. That seems buggy to me. I tried to start the engine here, and it did work. So I don't know what's going on with that. So that's checked or observed, so to say. Yes, you can see pitot tube cover is still on, so let's remove that first. There we go. And let's just do a cold and dark check. Parking brakes are set, live vest, fire extinguisher, door is closed, LT set to auto, flaps are up, and they are up. My mixture works, throttle, aft, trim is set, well, fuel tank's weird, fuel tank cutoff is in, alternate is in, the set is all off, except for the beacon, very good, off, and all these circuit breakers are still in. Nice! Let's turn on our batteries. Oh, other switch. We don't have any fuel. That's very, very interesting. Okay. Weight and balance. Rep, what are you doing? All right, that's interesting. I'm not quite sure, not quite aware of the change log of the 3.3. I know they changed a lot of new things, also options not for the 172, but also for the other aircraft that Rep supports, changing engines and stuff. But I don't think that the 172 has a lot of upgrades. The first thing that comes to mind when I don't see the fuel gauge work is that actually in the real world sometimes that can happen. The fuel gauge of the 172 is notoriously unreliable, so that's why you always need to check the fuel tanks, the actual fuel tanks. So let's do that first, because we know through X-Plane that we do have fuel quantity there, but this worries me. It doesn't look good. Anyways, batteries on. Yes, what I like to do is turn on all my lights, including my pitot heat. Let's go outside to see if that stuff is actually working. Pre-flights. No, I'd like to do a lights test. That's working. Working. Both are on. Very good. And what I'd like to do as well is, again, because I didn't do that, that's the pre-flight, post-flight. Yeah, you can see here that the pitot tube is warming up. Awesome. So everything is off again. Let's also check the avionics to see if all the displays go on. Good. And that shader, yeah, good. And then the flaps down. See if they also go down. Go down in sync. They do. Okay, batteries off. Let's do our walk around. Pre-flight. We already did. Baggage doors closed. Elevators. And they look good. We also need to check all of the inner components here to see if they actually work. Rudders, antennas, nav antennas. Tie-down is removed. ELT antenna is secure. Flaps wiggle. Oh, no, I like to test that. My ailerons. Good. Well, you can see. Color quantity 55 liters. So we do have fuel. Interesting. Gonna look that up, if that's a bug or whether that's a feature that our fuel gauge is not working. Chocks have been removed. Good tire. Quantity. Oh yeah, we now have that quantity measure that we asked for, that we requested, as you might remember from previous streams. That's really good to know. So we now know how many quarts there are in the engine, and this is plenty, max. Cover is removed. No density propeller. Status. Everything is good. Pitot tube was already removed. Ailerons work. Wiggle, toggles, great. There we are. Yeah. Fasten our seatbelts, and obviously, as always, our seatbelts, our real world seatbelts in my nerdy office chair. Close the doors. And then we need to do our briefing. So what are we going to do? Again, we are going to fly the SID of Palm Springs, the Cathedral 1 departure, offline, just for practicing flying these particular charts. We're going to fly to, we're going to taxi to 31 right, which is very, very nearby. It's somewhere over there. Short taxi. We are going to climb, to what altitude? Eventually we need to go to that MEA of 6,000 or whatever. That's probably not what we're going to do. Initially though, is there any kind of altitude that we need to hit? No, I don't think so. We just need to keep climbing. Okay, 310 until we hit the 268 radial outbound from Palm Springs. Yes, and then turn right direct to the Vortec. Then 104 DME, 10 DME outbound until we hit Emirates, right turn, and then we're going to enter that first holding pattern. And it's just going to be a direct entry. So that's going to be pretty basic. Perhaps we're also going to do fly another direction away from the Vortec, turn around and see how we would enter the holding through that standard holding entry procedure from an entirely different direction, just for practice sake. And then we're going to go back to Palm Springs. Okay, that's our briefing. Set our own weather, so not really that exciting. Good. Let's go. Batteries again on. A little bit of throttle. Fuel pump. 1, 2, 3, and cut off. Very good. Yeah, again, fuel tanks. Don't know what's going on there. Also not with the fuel gauges. Parking brakes are set. Yeah, clear prop. Ooh, nice wiggle there of the attitude indicator. That's new as well. Very cool. Set to 1200. Oil pressure is already in the green. Very good. Lean for ground. Watch that peak RPM. There it was. Back to 1000. And allow the engine to warm up. Very good. Alternator on. We see a rise in the ammeter. Avionics on. Flaps up. There they go. We can turn on mode C. Why not? And we don't need any radios, or at least not communication radios. We do need nav radios, obviously. What do we need? Well, Palm Springs 115.5. Let's use comp 1 for that. 115.5. And we need thermal. Let's set that to nav 2, and that's 116.2. Done. What radials do we need? First we're going to fly inbound, and we need radial 268 to determine when we're going to make that first right turn. So let's do that right now. 268. There it is. And then 104 outbound, and then inbound to the 4 tag, and you can see that's going to be again the texts. Turn right direct. Oh yeah, just direct to Palm Springs there, so no particular radial to fly. For the sake of our own holding pattern stuff, we can get back to 304. That we already set in the nav 2, and yeah, so for thermal we only need 322 to verify that we are at MROT at 10 DME. There it is, 322. 322. Okay. Yeah, and then we can set the OBS to 304 so we can fly that holding pattern. That's good. Anything else? Well, we can already set the heading bug to 304. Because I don't need it for anything else, I guess. Alright, very good. Don't need the weather, all custom weather. No one to speak to. This is all good, good, good. Annunciator, messages look great. What's our altitude here? Airports. Palm Springs, 476. Something like this. Very good. And our heading indicator 24. It's off. As you can see, it should be 22. 220. Set. We're also going to need our stopwatch to fly our holding pattern. So each lag, that long lag, downwind lag, upwind lag, you can think of in our holding pattern is a 1 minute lag to fly. And making that turn 180 degrees in a standard rate turn is also going to be 1 minute. So each lag is going to be 1 minute. Yeah, so that's why we need a stopwatch for that. Now, obviously, with crosswind components, that minute can actually be extended or shortened based on what the crosswind direction would be, and that's also something that we need to practice as well. And also each one. If you got a wind on your tail, you're going to shorten that lag. If you've got a headwind, then you need to shorten or prolong that particular lag. Yeah, that's all been set. Yeah, again, weird fuel gauge. Don't know what's going on there. Our engine is slowly warming up. It's already at 75, so that means that we are ready to taxi. Let's put on our nav lights and our taxi lights as well, just to be visible, even though we're not flying multiplayer at all. Good. Again, we're going to taxi to 31 right. Parking brakes released. Brake test. Works. 900 RPM will give us a steady taxi for 172. Make sure we don't hit anyone. Cannot wait for the day that we're going to fly our own Skyhawk. That's going to be so surreal. I mean, in a way we could already, but we don't have any 3D cockpit made or any external visual model other than that gray blob. And also the visual model you have the 172. The default 172 is pretty damn good, but it can be so much more interactive and also much more better measured. A lot of the proportions of the cockpit are off. A lot of jets. So we're now exiting the non-movement area, these lines here, so that means that from here on out we do need to have been speaking to ground controllers. This is control taxi area. 3 more right, confirms. Also with our heading indicator. Would point our nose into the wind, but there's no wind. What is our engine saying? Well, it's not already in the green arc, so we need to warm up our engine first. Let's go to 1200 RPM minimum. Highest or maximum RPM to run if our engine is not warm. Otherwise we might damage our engine. As you can see, it's slowly warming up. So that gives us time again to rehearse. Let's just first do our test here. I did do my control surfaces test before we went. To the right, that one goes down. That one goes up. To the left, that one goes down. That one goes up. Elevators, up, down. Also the trim tab. Yep, it's working. Awesome. Depart 310 until this line crosses the center. We're going to make a right turn. Then we're going to adjust the OBS to fly direct to Palm Springs. VORTAC, we're going to keep climbing. And yeah, once we hit VORTAC, Palm Springs, we're going to continue 104, 10 DME until we hit this outbound radial. And once we do, right turn, and then 304 inbound holding pattern. And it's going to be fun. You also need to adjust that thing to 304. Not too difficult, but I'd like to go through each and every different procedure here. Engine is slowly warming up, not there yet. There. With the REP, with the relaxation pack, if you do run into higher RPMs when your engine is still cold or relatively cold, you damage the thing, which is really cool. You will notice, and you will run into all kinds of engine troubles, and you will not be happy. We are in the green. Mixture full in. Let's go to 1800s. There we go, no shaded messages, everything is stable. Engine gauges look good as well. Left mag, small enough drop, good. Back to both. Right one, small enough drop incomparable. Back to both. Everything seems to still work just fine. Completely idle. Still oil pressure is there, no shaded messages. Engine is still running. Very good. Alrighty. Taxi lights off, landing lights on. 1 inch of flaps, we are trimmed. Yeah, fuel tank's a bit weird. Let's go. Let's use all of the runway. Can never have too much runway. All right. And we are ready to go. Right, a bit of right rudders. Speed Saline engine is still in the green. 50. And 60 rotates. And there she goes. Put her nose down, press there to keep our airspeed increasing. VY. Nose down, trim a bit. And there we go, Palm Springs. Man, it's been a long time flying. Let's go to 301. And that's 300 feet. Flaps up. Nose up a bit. Trim up. And we just keep on flying. First cue is going to be that turn. Well, that movement of that needle. Not entirely IMC though, but it will do. Everything looks good. Too much pitched up, as you can see. Speed is slowly decreasing. I set visibility to around 300 feet, but apparently X-Plane doesn't care because I can see so much further ahead. Waiting for that needle on the nav1. Stay on 301 Tim. 306. Good. Man, I've been missing out on flying again. That photo reel never gets boring. Wow. Look at that, guys. Alright, let the lights off. I didn't put on my strobe lights on. Forgot about that. Well, we would easily hit that MEA or MCA for this departure or en route section. That's interesting. I see a movement in the needle. Very, very slowly, I think. Yes. Good. Also, something very, very interesting that I read about, also as part of more advanced pre-flight tests, is for IFR there are some additional tests to do to make sure that your IFR equipment works. For example, your nav1. How do you test that the thing is actually correctly calibrated? I thought that's just a once-in-a-lifetime test or a yearly test, but and perhaps it is. Shouldn't do that each and every time. But one test you could do, for example, is set both your nav1 and nav2 to the same VOR beacon and see if they read out the same heading. If not, then one is off, right? You need to visit your hangar. Well, heading is not that precise. Not good. To Miss Mate, explain my rudder pedals are really sensitive on the ground. Do you find this? No. I think they're pretty, at least for the Rep 172 Jim, it works just fine. Alright, the VOR of Palm Springs is just behind us there on over our right shoulder. What's that beep? That's an autopilot kind of sound, which is weird because our autopilot is not on. A marker beacon thing? I don't know. Alright, centered. Now standard rate turn, a little bit of right rudder there, and remove it. See, standard rate turn, trimming there, mid nose up. Would expect to fly this. East. And a bit. Good. There we go. Inbound to the vortex of PSP. You can see it here on the GPS. So now, because we're higher than 3000, we can lean our engine a bit, which saves us fuel, and also we get better performance. Look at that, man! And once we cross Palm Springs, well, we can stick at 6,000 by the way. Don't need to go any higher. Push down, allow that airspeed to increase first to run cruise. Around 100. Set back our RPM to run 23, 22, something like that. Down trim a bit, release that yoke pressure. Can further lean. Yes, our AGT can be improved a bit. Nice, a bit more power. Goes up. Good. 4.6. Majicon, hello! Long time no see. How are you doing? How are you doing, my man? And where's Palm Springs? It is over to our right side. Can I see it? It's just behind the strut there. Most beautiful airport, in my opinion. Which is mostly due to the fact that I did my very first ATC contact on PilotEdge here at the Palm Springs airport. So nostalgia makes this airport my #1 airport. Also, this is so gorgeous area to fly. It looks great. You got a well, Charlie kind of. It's actually a Delta class airport. It's a TRSA, but on PilotEdge you get. Thank you for the subscription, Ika. Thanks. How are you doing? Thank you. I really appreciate that support. But also, it's there's always good weather here. Mostly always good weather, good flying weather. We got also some very nice non-controlled airports nearby. So this is really fun. Now our Neil is running away from us because we're really nearing that vortex. But also give a little bit more power here. Descending there, so I'm not really on target. That's something that I'm noticing right now. Not that precise. And as IFR pilot, you should be so much more precise. Ah, good, you're doing well, MageCon. Thank you for subscribing for 8 months, man. Heitka, you're too kind. Usually when I see a notification here on my stream, I just see subscription, and that's already, I'm so grateful. But I forget to read the chat to see how many months, because obviously that also depends. Man, thank you so much. Really good. Trusting follower. Yeah, so 0.6, not going to run to 0 because we're also overflying it at 6,000 feet, so that's also a distance from the VORTAC. So 104. So a little bit to the right. And every 10 minutes or so, cross-check your magnetic compass with your heading indicator, because your heading indicator may run away from your true track. Already a little bit. We're now flying 105. Well, that's true. It's about right. GT nicely high up. Again, that fuel gauge. What's going on there? And also our fuel pump. Clearly that's not working. We're not active because otherwise we won't have any fuel in our system, which we clearly do have. So I think that's a bug that we need to notify sim coders of. That's alarming, yes, Irish. But I know sim coders for long enough, and I did a very quick test before I started my stream. But and I initially thought, which could be cool, that the as I mentioned a few minutes ago, before we took off. And again, I'm really wobbling around at 104 degrees. That the fuel gauge for the 172 is actually notoriously unreliable. So that's why it's always important to do your pre-flight test and see what's in the tank. So I thought, oh, did they also incorporate that? But I mean, it's not interactive. I can click. You see a cursor there, but it doesn't do anything. So it seems buggy to me. Okay, so what are we doing? Again, we're flying away from the VORTAC. We expect to hit MRUT, our intersection. So here's the Palm Springs VORTAC. We're now flying at 104 radial outbound, and as the description tells us, climb via the 104 outbound radial to the intersection MRUT at 10 DME. But you can also see here on the visual representation of this SID that also corresponds with the cross-referenced VOR position with the 322 radial outbound from thermal, which we also already set here in our F2. So let's see if we're gonna hit 10 DME, if then also the needle would be in the middle. Now we're not really, I'm not flying exactly 104. I guess because I feel a little bit too casual here chatting with you guys and flying since a few weeks. I'll be working on my 172 Playmaker. So cool. I've learned so much about aerodynamics and also Playmaker and Airflow Maker, and just the prospect of being able to animate every little button in our Skyhawk and all kinds of other ideas that I have to make it more educationally rich. That really excites me. Still, we have so much to do. So I need to learn Blender, 3D modeling software to make the thing. That was so cool, but then I didn't find any time to fly. Those extra ender breakers are about the only things I missed from the 122 back on P3D. Ah, roger that, Irish. Mr. Designer, hey Scrap, good to see you. Again, thank you for your donation earlier in the previous stream. Appreciate it. 6.2 miles. What I also saw my instructor do, which is actually a good thing, or a handy thing, subtle changes in your heading. For example, now we're flying about 103.4. Are better to do. Changes, subtle heading changes, are actually much easier to do with your pedals, because through slipping, by using your pedals, you're moving your aircraft on that lateral axis. One wing, the outer wing, is going to go faster through the air because you're slipping, and so that outer wing generates more lift. And so eventually, if you have a proper airframe, your outer wing goes up a bit, and so you bank a bit. That's also one of the tests that I did with my Skyhawk, that when we do a rudder deflection, that should translate into a bank. And so you can also steer with using the pedals. Now, not really to make really proper, fast, nice coordinated turns, but for smaller corrections, yeah, why not? Bit of right pedals here. All right, 8.7 nautical miles. Apply a little bit more ailerons here to get on track. And you can see the needle on an F2 is slowly creeping in. Very slowly. And that's what we would expect at 9.5 dB, right? So I've been a little bit off with my heading, so I think that's the case. Or that explains why it's not completely in sync. 304. That's going to be our intercept heading for that first holding pattern ever I'm going to fly. So there we go, standard rate turn. A little bit of nose up trim there because we're going to drop down. Look at that scenery, what beautiful flying weather. I set it to no visibility, 300 feet, and this is what X-Plane does. I don't know what's going on here, but... So back to some flying there, exactly, Scrap. Well, not only today, my core practice is flying. I'm a serious student pilot, and I was already busy as part of my season 2 of my series here to learn how to fly IFR on PilotEdge. Already completed my PPL, my VFR training on PilotEdge. But while I was at it, in my season 2 IFR flying bit, I fell in love with the idea of making my own Skyhawk, and so I temporarily stopped my, took a break from my IFR training to make my Skyhawk, or at least the first stages, that plane maker and flight testing phase. So now that I completed that flight model, that's a nice time to go back to my IFR flight training. So there's still a lot to do. Holding patterns and also my very first instrument approaches, a lot of those that we're going to practice actually. Just run into now in that door box my sights. Holding patterns, stage 4. Charted visual approaches, ILS, LPV approaches, which is pretty much the same actually. Gonna do a lot. Alright, there's our 304 needle. So we're still a little bit flying inbound to that needle, which is kind of cool. And there we are, inbound to that radial. So we're now flying actually the inbound track of our holding pattern. Let's see. 304. And so once we hit it, this is clearly a direct entry. You don't need to do any fancy other way to get in it. This is very, very easy. So as soon as we're going to hit that vortex, we're going to make our first pattern. But then once we did that, I'm going to fly off a bit, just a few miles, and enter it from an entirely different heading to see what other entries I can do, just for the sake of practicing those. I mean, flying holding patterns is not that difficult, and so the fact that for my training program here, again, UncertifiedPilot.com, you can see all the planned flights, scheduled flights, training flights that I'm about to do. Holding patterns, VOR, intersections, NDBs, usually also made variations for winds calm and crosswind ones, that's a bit too much. A little bit exaggerated there, so... oh, I didn't update my iPad, that's weird. Let me see, we're completely on the needle. 5.5 miles, good. Stopwatch is in the ready. Not on my altitude at all, so yeah, also not really paying attention or even trying. And I should, because flying altitudes and headings at IFR is so important. I mean, with VFR you can allow yourself some leverage there. Also, you should always be precise. But with IFR flying, the controllers really expect you to fly that particular heading with that particular. Also, with your certification, your check rides, you need to be much more precise flying headings. So it should be a constant scan. And I noticed that when I'm streaming, obviously I'm just chatting away and it's just fun to fly and chat with you guys. That really distracts. See if I can get my iPad working again. Weird. 3.3 miles left. Will you implement some proper scroll wheel support and click and drag in your 172? Scroll wheel support. I don't know if I can do that and click and drag in your 172. That seems a really cool idea, Scrap. But again, I'm limited to what X-Plane allows us to do, so I cannot build that, I think, in our model. What I am considering more and more is to also mess around with programming the 172 using Python or the plugins language to do stuff. Even if it's just very simple